Last Pint Productions presents The New Way podcast. The New Way contains adult content, including foul language, and we've been canceled. Damn it. Canceled before I could even advise listener discretion. Fuck. Listener discretion is advised.
The cancel culture people are doing what they're doing. Their hearts are in the right place. It's just the way that they're going about it.
The execution, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, you know, telling a stupid joke is a long ways away from taking your dick out at work. I mean, I think I could say that, right?
Yes.
So I don't know how you somehow get lumped into that, where it's just like, how could you?
Right.
In front of all those adults.
Everybody wants to be naked and famous. Everybody wants to be just like me. I'm naked.
Will you help teach me about this? What is it? A new way?
Hello! Oh. You just bench.
I was about to try and match you, so because I knew you were going to say hello and welcome to the New Way podcast.
I literally heard Ben's mouth open wetly on the other side of the room, and I was like, what's he gonna do? Welcome to the New Way podcast. That's 2 in a row where we've had a weird intro to the show. The New Way is, of course, your one-stop shop for pop culture talk, where we dissect the things that you don't want to take the time to do yourself. I am here in studio.
That is not our tagline.
Listen.
Oh, yeah, I thought the slogan was we talk about pop culture,
so you don't have to.
to.
Right.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
What are you gonna put on the bumper sticker, Matt? You gotta pick one.
Yeah. we're definitely confusing some branding.
You know, I was
out there.
trying to test some new things out to see if anyone noticed, and you guys did, so you passed. You passed the test. Well done.
You know what you got? F plus.
You get nothing.
I don't appreciate being toyed with.
I'm sorry, Nick. I should have let you in on this.
You replaced my Folgers crystals, and I'm Chris Folger.
I am in studio with Mr. Benjamin Wilson, and
Hi.
of course on Skype, coming to us live from LA, is Mr. Nicholas Anacroce.
For most of the podcast, at least.
Well,
Yeah.
at least half an hour. We'll see.
Yeah, Nick's gonna last as long as he can, which is what he tells the ladies that he makes the sweet love to. Nick is off to wondrous Japan tomorrow. Is that correct, Nick?
That is correct.
So
Going to Japan.
So this is a true, we didn't pre-plan this or talk about this, but I actually don't know what the impetus was for you to just be like up and say, hey, fuck it, I'm going to Japan. So can you explain that?
Well, you know, Ben, my paternal clock is ticking. I'm still surprisingly single and alone. It's my last chance to see the world before I wither up and die. So I grabbed the bull by the horns, and I just kind of it happened kind of organically, but it's a place that I've always wanted to go to since I was a.
So you're not going for work? I thought you were going for work.
I just tuned out after you said I'm single. So
I was more concerned. I was more concerned with where Nick was going with the "I'm single" part. I'm like, are you going to find a bride, or what is? It seemed like you're on a bit of a path there, but
Finished. I'm going to Japan to find a bride. I met someone on the OkCupid. I set my destination for Japan. Just wanted to spice it up a little bit, and here we are.
Is she a Weezer fan? Of course she is.
no, this girl ain't half Japanese. She's full Japanese.
Boy, this is some really good radio for us to talk about when we get into overstepping the line and racial stereotypes later on in the podcast.
Oh, man.
We walked right into this one perfectly.
Was that a stereotype, or were you just quoting Weezer?
I mean, Weezer. I mean, I guess it is I guess it's not a stereotype. It's just a lot of Japanese girls like Weezer, right?
That's true.
Oh yes, I can actually attest to this. Have you not been to a Weezer concert?
No.
Oh,
You've
Oh,
never,
no, wait. I have. Yeah.
I was about to say, you've never seen Weezer before?
No, I've seen Weezer.
But yeah, no, there is a large Asian population, especially Japanese, that really digs Weezer. It's a huge part of their audience.
Speaking of
Is it bigger faction than white dudes? I don't think so.
white dudes with beards and glasses.
Nick, nothing is bigger than white dudes. Okay.
Speaking of white dudes, guess what band I am seeing in Japan?
You're seeing a
Do you know,
band?
Matt?
No.
Yeah. Guess what it is. Ben, tell him.
He's going to see the Get Up Kids.
Oh my God Almighty! The Get Up Kids in
Tokyo.
Japan. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
They happen to be there. So, and get this. You know what I did today?
What's that?
I applied and I got an international driver's license, guys.
Oh my God! You're gonna drive. You're driving in. Are you going alone?
No, I'm going with our pal Michael Maroney with film school. Me and Benny.
Okay.
He is probably the best, best companion for a random crazy road trip, and I can't think of a better person because he's down for everything.
That's awesome.
And we both got our international driver's license today. You know
Oh
why?
wow!
You know why?
Why? He's going to drive a car?
Is
It's more of a cart.
it's
A Mario? Oh, you're going to do Mario Kart in Tokyo.
We are going to Mario Kart in the streets of Tokyo in cosplay. And we need an
That's-
international driver's license to do so.
I am
We
so
are-
much more excited for this trip for you. I just assumed this was a work thing and you were going to spend like a couple of days like doing some personal stuff, but this is much more exciting now.
No, I mean, this is just. I always wanted to go to Australia and Tokyo, and I was lucky enough to go to Australia. That was for work, and I just gonna take some time and just have this experience and try to soak it in. I'm really excited.
Hell
I'm really
yeah,
excited.
man. I'm excited for you.
That's awesome.
I'm going to
Yeah,
I'm very
war-torn
jealous.
Hong Kong in 2.5 weeks, so you have me beat. There.
Well, just
No,
be
no,
careful on those
they'll have you beat. In,
there's no one throwing like Molotov cocktails where you're going, so enjoy your easy trip.
man. In all
They aren't until
seriousness,
they aren't until
Go
Nick
ahead.
shows up.
Well, yeah. They increased police presence by twofold. I heard it's
Yeah, I'm
getting
not-
quietly more dangerous.
So I keep like sending, just random news stories to my business partner and his wife. So those of you who don't know, I am going to China in 2.5 weeks for a few days in Hong Kong and then over to Guangzhou again and then back to Hong Kong. We've had this trip planned since April. There's a big toy fair out there called Mega Toy Fair. So all of the stuff has been happening in Hong Kong and I just keep sending things to my business partner who's a very everything just sort of rolls off his back. Like there's not a care in the world for it's a man that grew up in South Africa with like lions. So I guess that just gives you a different perspective. But I just keep sending him things are getting really bad. He's like, that'll blow over. I don't think it's going to blow over, but
It'll be fun.
The entire population's fighting for their lives. It's no big deal. Lives and freedom are at stake.
yeah. Well, I remember my favorite thing from him was he's like, we'll have no problem flying in. Flying out could be a problem, but flying in will be no big deal.
Right.
It's like,
Oh
great.
my god.
Nobody actually wants to go there right now.
Yeah, flights were still strangely expensive, despite the fact that nobody wants to go there. But I'll let you know if I make it back. If I don't, Nick, I give you permission to go to Tenacious D and use our good seats by yourself. I'm with your friend, and go in my memory.
I'll bring my wife.
Fresh off the boat.
Well, I mean, Weezer is playing in that concert, so she'll be very, very happy to see her favorite band, and then those other two guys, Weezer and Foo Fighters.
I just hope that you meet your future
Her
wife.
favorite
I hope you meet your future wife at the Get Up Kids show.
Well, I mean, she's gonna go. She's more of a Bauhaus Smiths
Oh, okay.
girl. I think she'll still enjoy it.
How resentful on a scale this is a question for Nick. Ben, you don't have to answer this. How resentful on a scale of 1 to 10 will Ben be if you come back with a future wife that's like the biggest Get Up Kids fan of all time, or maybe even related to someone in the band?
Yeah, and her dad is the head coach of Georgia.
And they invite you up to play in the band on stage?
Guys, not funny.
Ben.
Kirby Smart's oldest child is 7.
Oh god. Well, he had a secret daughter.
I love secret daughters. They're my favorite. So in other news, there was a bright spot in the news the last week. I'm not talking about any impeachment proceedings. I'm talking about something even more amazing and fantastic, and that is the great war between Sony and Marvel Disney has ended. and Spider-Man has come back into the MCU fold. And I'll tell you what, I legit smiled more at that news story than I probably should have compared it to the other things I was reading this week.
I think it might have been one of you guys, but the funniest thing that I saw was the meme online as soon as it became, which is the two Spider-Mans pointing at one another, and the underlying thing was, what happens when Marvel and Sony realize they both still like making money? And the two Spider-Mans are pointing at each other.
That one I did not see. The one I saw was the Wolf of Wall Street. Like, I'm not gonna go.
Well, that's because that's what Tom Holland posted.
Exactly.
I'm not fucking leaving.
I'm not fucking leaving.
And if you go to the Raimi memes,
Oh,
subreddit,
yeah.
you're in for a treat there too. Although they most of them love Spider-Man 2 and 3, so I can only take so much.
Yeah, I mean, I love 2. I do not love 3, but I do love 2. But this is good news for everyone. I think involved in this, and I am very fascinated to it. Nick, you had kind of a take on what you thought happened, which basically was that this was a Sony win 100%. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, I mean the whole thing kind of erupted over Disney approaching Sony, I believe, and lightly suggesting that, hey, why don't we go 50-50 on these next movies? And Sony, rightfully so, they own the rights, said, no way. We own the rights. We're not going to go 50-50. And then they went their separate ways. Now, what I take from that is now that the dust has settled and Tom Holland is back to join Tobey Maguire as the second trilogy actor for Peter Parker, now Disney is getting 25% as opposed to 50%. And to me, that just seems like a clear negotiating win. They kind of called Disney's bluff. Disney is used to kind of getting everything, and they won. Sony won.
Does Disney? But I thought the bigger thing also was that in the original deal, Marvel still held all of the rights to any merchandising, and Disney did.
Yes,
therein. But now there's also, I think, some sort of profit split on the merchandising.
I heard that actually Disney still owned the merch. I think the thing that they retained, that they went down to 25%, but they were still retaining the merchandising.
So they did
rights.
still,
yes.
Because I was about to say, I mean, like, it's Spider-Man.
Makes
merchandising is huge.
Yeah, and it makes sense also makes sense for Disney to like go look at their sales of things and go like, we can still sell Spider-Man shit at our parks, at our like, there's all kinds of places we can make money off of Spider-Man outside of the actual movie.
Now Sony had the video game rights for Spider-Man, and Disney had the animation rights. So the new What If series, they were saying before the deal was made that was the way that Tom Holland would re-enter the MCU through the animated show that's going to be premiering on Disney Plus. But the thing is, I feel like Sony's getting better, and it's hard to judge because I feel like the studio was pretty hands off with Spider-Verse, which I think is the best Spider-Man movie ever made. And the Sony films didn't have anything to do with the video game, which was better written character-wise than any film that Sony has helmed.
So I have a question. So who owns? So you're saying Disney owns the animation rights, but they didn't do Spider-Verse. Was all Sony.
That is a good point.
Which I'm super confused.
I think it means this. I think that Sony could make an animated film, but Disney is not prohibited from making.
Or Disney owns the TV rights, which Sony wouldn't see any use in, and Disney would see lots of use in.
That makes sense. That could possibly be the deal. But
when I said,
I gotta say the game and Spider-Verse were great, and maybe Sony just needs just one more film working with Kevin Feige, and maybe they are on the road of being able to make a good Spider-Man film without the help of Marvel. I won't hold my breath, but one can hope.
I mean, you can't also. I mean, understanding that Spider-Verse was fantastic and the game is good. It's not like Homecoming was fucking chopped liver. I mean, Homecoming was fucking great. So it's
to me, it's Far From Home. I mean,
yeah. To me, it's not even close. It's Spider-Verse and it is the two Tom Holland films, and then the first Raimi. Right. I kind of think Far From Home is a close second to me.
Yeah.
Spider-Verse, but even then, right behind that is Homecoming. They were great films, and I'm really hoping John Watts gets signed on, and I'm sure he will, because
Now he's definitely going to be on board.
Yeah, I really, and that was another bargaining chip. Marvel, back when they thought they weren't going to get Spidey, really courted him to do the new Nova movie.
Yeah.
Threw a bunch of money at him just to kind of mess with Sony. And I think in the end, maybe they thought that's what got them a win. But when you look at just, X's and O's, Sony definitely won this one. They're going to get a little more guidance. They're going to get a little more direction. And I think that what they're going to do is they're going to introduce sort of a shared villain universe that will kind of help the eventual divorce. And I mean, as a fan, it's nice to know the divorce is coming, as opposed to being blindsided and getting the chance to look forward to one more film to end up the trilogy.
And we know that we get Tom Holland in one more Avengers movie. That was part of the deal.
In one more movie.
Or Fantastic Four.
Or what my theory was is that it's a Venom movie. And that it's I still think there's something more to the deal that was to get Venom more tied to the MCU, because I think somewhere I don't
think enough people liked Venom.
No, but that's what I'm saying. See, that's what I'm saying. Here's my weird conspiracy, because Nick doesn't agree with me on this one either. So I'm a lone one out. But I think Sony somewhere started to kind of realize, like, hey, maybe we don't go the route of DC, and maybe the last X-Men movie wasn't so great. And we got a lot of shit for that. And maybe also we've gotten a lot of bad feedback on Venom. Despite it being a box office hit, maybe it wasn't great. I'm watching Nick is doing his Venom puppet here on the TV screen. But I think somebody, and I think also the fact of the backlash from the fans when Sony was like, hey, we're going to do our own Spider-Man, everyone was like, no. That was a very loud and angry response that I don't think that studio was quite...
That's gotta hype.
Yeah, quite ready for. So I have a feeling that I think somebody there was smart enough to raise their hand in a meeting and go, hey, MCU ties for us can be nothing but good things. Even if the movie tanks, we blame it on Marvel and Disney, and we go and do our own thing, or we just continue to ride these coattails and make fucking great movies and pocket money off of it. And that's I think there's definitely something to it, and I think the Venom thing is a concern for them. I think they don't know what to do with that franchise, but the idea that they can dovetail it into Spider-Man, I think, is obviously an end goal.
I'm telling you, man, I really love the idea of Flash becoming the MCU Venom. They set up the fact that he just has no parental support. He's lonely. He's sad. He thinks he's better than he is. He wants to be famous online. He wants people to like him, but nobody does. That would be the perfect introduction to a cooler, reimagined Venom. Tom Hardy, I don't dislike as Eddie Brock. He's definitely got the look. He's comic accurate, but of course, Matt and I did figure out the best way to introduce.
We did
over a long text thread when I was sitting in the airport the other day. Maybe that's another show. But I think really at this point, maybe you're right. Maybe that's the other movie that they're talking about in the contract, Matt. But Watts has gone on record saying he wants to do Kraven, and I think that what we're going to see is, now that Spider-Man's cover is blown, I think we're going to see Nick Fury. I think that Nick Fury is going to step in with the Skrulls to help create a little confusion and make them kind of doubt JJ's assessment and discredit Mysterio. And perhaps my biggest wish of all time, an introduction of the MCU Daredevil, Matt Murdock, the lawyer, who takes Peter Parker's case pro bono. My bono grows, and all is right with the world.
Okay. Well,
Christ.
There you have it.
Man without fear, baby. And I hope it's Charlie Cox.
Boy. Well, speaking of Cox, maybe that's the best way to transition out of this. I don't really know how to at this point, but that was quite an impassioned plea there.
Pro bono your Cox.
Pro bono my... Whoa. You just went full robot on us, Nick.
Don't know where he got to.
I know a few phrases.
Okay.
I know a few
Well,
phrases.
so let's get
Do you want to
in.
know how to say beer in Japanese? Biru. Biru.
Biru?
Yeah, so I'll hold up two and I'll go biru.
Ah,
2 beers.
there you go. You didn't learn how to say two, just biru.
Onegaishima.
What-
That means please.
Onigashima. Well,
Onegaishima. I've been working.
you've learned beer and to beg. You're going to do very well in Japan.
I think Onegaishima is please. Yeah,
Your wife,
Onegaishima.
your wife is gonna like you so much.
Please, beer. Please, beer.
Please.
Where's the bathroom? Please, beer.
I mean, to be fair, those are the only 3 things you need to learn how to say. If you're me.
Oh, man.
If it weren't this podcast, it's the only things I would say in real life.
Well, on that note, so during our last episode, we were kind of trying to fill a little bit of time, and someone brought up Shane Gillis, who is the SNL cast member hired for like a day and a half before they unearthed some of his not even older, some things he like literally said on podcasts within the week. And they determined that he was not a good fit after the public outcry, and they fired him. So it brought up a lot of conversations about what people like to call as cancel culture. And I thought it would be a really interesting thing for us to dive into. We don't, obviously we just spent 20 minutes on Spider-Man. So that tends to be usually where we go. But there are a couple of other episodes that we have done, just so you know, if you want to listen to kind of a little bit different spin and talk about certain things. Episode 48, we talked about sexist
Sexism,
Hollywood, and that was kind of the
Harvey
Harvey
Weinstein.
Weinstein and that scandal breaking up. Episode 61 was called Where's the Line, which was essentially the episode we did post James Gunn being fired from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is going to come up on this podcast tonight. And episode 85, which is about sexism in film. So we do try to get some other topics. And if you guys like this stuff, please feel free to, let us know things you want to hear us kind of weigh in on. But cancel culture is, I think, a huge thing amongst us. And it's very interesting because there
Us
are
meaning those damn millennials who get offended at everything. Fucking snowflakes.
white guys. We are maybe not the most diverse crew. We are definitely not the most diverse crew. Forget the maybe. But I think there's a lot of opinions and a lot of kind of facts that can be discussed about this. And I want to start this off by playing a couple of clips for you. And they're both about 2 minutes or so. But I think this is really important for us to start making some distinctions between what we see as far as comedy or satire and what is just plain old shitty racism and bad jokes, right? So the first clip I have is one of the more recent podcasts that Shane Gillis had done. It is some of the worst podcast filler I've just from a entertainment standpoint. It is terrible podcasting, but it is also so very like racist.
Kettle
just
meat pot.
yeah. No, I mean like all right, Nick.
Not the racist part so much.
The
but more about
boring
the bad
podcast.
air.
No, I'm
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
equally offended at their shitty podcast as I am of the fact that it is really just 2 minutes of like. So we just made some semi-cultural based jokes here that I think stand in stark contrast to what you're going to hear. So I'm just going to play the clip here so you can get an idea.
Damn, Chinatown's fucking nuts.
It's crazy, dude.
It is full fucking China, dude. It's a
Yeah.
fucking Chinese down there.
I wonder how that started. They just built one fucked up looking building, and people were like, "All right, no one said anything.
Let
Let's."
the fucking chinks live there, huh?
Well, they built these fucking like huge Shanghai house. The first one must
Yeah.
have infuriated everyone. They were like,
I'm pissed
what
now.
the
I go
fuck?
down there. I'm like, what are you guys doing here? Get these ducks out of that window.
You know what? Yeah, true. Also, I'm always like, how can there be so many fucking restaurants down here?
All rest. Well, because
You go in, there's like one person
The
eating.
loud
at it.
guy is
lady
not
looks like
Shane
me
Gillis.
down
Shane
there,
Gillis is
sucking
quieter
down
guy.
neuters.
I hate China. I hate the food at Chinatown. Sucks.
I like
Chinese food's a very dishonest cuisine.
it. I don't even want to think about it.
They invented a fucking chemical to put in their food to make it delicious, dude.
It is.
They made it as MSG.
Good for them.
It's a dishonest food, dude. There's nothing. There's
dishonorable.
nothing to it. It's shitty
very
meat.
honorable.
Shitty meat. A chemical they made up to fuck your body up, and noodles.
The neuters are fucking
Cheapest thing in the world.
Great. We got
Chemical.
Sick.
Worst meat you can find.
We got in there and we sat down, and baby girl was like, "I'm so excited for noodles," and I was like, "Yo, chill, chill, chill." She was like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry."
She said neuters.
Yeah, and there's a fucking and it's full fucking Chinese in there. It's like and it's such
Well, isn't
a
it?
weird,
Isn't that kind of like nice though? Isn't that being when people go into like a Mexican restaurant, like I'll have 2 tacos. Like I'll have a bowl of spicy noodles.
But we had in the translation between you and the waiter.
Yeah.
It's just such a fucking hassle. It's like, I'm pointing at it. Like, this is the fucking
Yeah.
noodle.
Well, that's why I put number for like 57.
Yeah, this one, even with the fucking shit, I was
Yeah.
pointing. I was like, that sauce, that. She's like, yes. It's like, yeah, that one. She's like, yeah. She's like, medium or spicy? Yeah. She's like, medium. She's like, spicy. I was like, no, medium. No medium, spicy.
Yeah. So this
First off, Chinatown is awesome.
Yeah.
And the food is
Forget about it, Nick. It's Chinatown.
so. There's that.
That's amazing, Ben. It's I did not think that was happening. It's
And look, for me, the obvious red flag is when just like imitating the accent and all that. But like the bigger thing to me is when they start off with, they build one fucked up building. It just reeks of like it ain't
yeah.
white.
Yeah, and the guy going like, "Oh, people must have
reeks
been
of-
thrilled about that. You got ducks in your window," and like it is so.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it really sounds like this fearful alt-right bullshit that has emerged. And the thing is, this wasn't James Gunn's tweets of 7 years ago.
No, this was like a week ago.
Last week.
So
And if you don't want to hire a guy who sounds like Richard Sherman's protege, that's their decision. That's Lorne Michaels' call.
and it's not like, well, so there's a couple of things going on here. One is the fact that there are no jokes being made. This is a comedy podcast, but this to me is a discussion. So when we have a discussion here, I can couch certain things we say as being like obviously jokes, but these aren't jokes. These are literally, I mean, he rattles off and calls people chinks in the first like second of the this conversation, for lack of a better word.
The one thing okay, so I'm gonna unpack this, or at least my side of this a little bit, because I think I'm gonna have a very kind of definitively different take on a lot of what is free speech in America than what you guys might think, but I think context is king here. Because that was the thing that threw me off, was the chinks thing right at the beginning. I was just like, okay, you just fucking set yourself up for failure right there.
Yeah.
You're not having an intelligent conversation about it, and you're not presenting it in a context where, because I feel like people should be able to make light of certain situations or certain. And the thing is, it's like, I'm not saying you should make light of culture or anything along those lines, but it just right off the bat, it's just like, well, these guys are looking at this from the entirely wrong perspective. That being said, like the whole neuters thing, you know how that was popularized, right? Because there is a very famous Asian chef who cannot say noodles. She gets billions of views on YouTube, and she says neuters because she's Japanese, and that's the way that she says it. And she prints shirts. She has shirts.
Yes.
She sells merchandise that says neuters. I mean, it's a thing.
So
that doesn't bother me as much as some of the other.
So let me play
bullshit.
this. I have a counterpoint to what we just played, right? So the next clip I'm going to play is behind the scenes of the South Park guys making an episode with the City Walk Chinese guy and Mr. Yakimoto, their Japanese guy. Two very, very overt Asian stereotypes, right? And this is their conversation going to their staff, and half of the staff is Asian, mind you, that's going on here. So just this is, to me,
Is it really?
Yeah. So they talk about on this thing, just the ones that they're like actually showing in this clip, because they say they like to, when they look for drawings or notes on stuff, they pick the one person in the room that would be most offended, and they make them do the like thing to come up with. You'll listen to it, right? This is the difference between what these guys did and what the people in South Park do. And if you can't tell the difference, there is a major problem with you out there. So just listen to this.
Hey, Mr. Nakayama, you know that China and Japan are actually a different country? Oh, really? That's right. And if you look at a map, you see China and Japan separated by a body of water. Oh.
This place, City Sushi, is new. You know, some Japanese guy opened up City Sushi right next to fucking City Walk, and everyone thinks it's Chinese food and that it's better Chinese food, and that makes him furious. It's super important to these two people that everyone understands the fucking difference. So they do an assembly together. Mr. Kim and Mr. Yakimoto present Chinese, Japanese, what's the diff?
Hey, what's the diff?
Do you feel like the City Walk guy is a stereotype?
Yes. but I guess we have to go almost all the way, right, in order to kind of make a statement about what it is as an absurd stereotype.
Okay, kids, today we have a special assembly, okay, we're gonna learn about the diversity of Asian people. Okay, please welcome Mr. Liu Kim and Mr. Junichi Nakayama.
Ni hao ma, South Park Elementary! Konnichiwa! How are we all feeling? Yay, boy! Did you know that China and Japan are actually a different countries? Oh, really?
Trey's gonna push it. He's gonna push it over the top, and if you pull back visually or pull back on your assignment, he won't get what he wants. Dude, you work at South Park. You better figure out what's funny about that and be able to execute it.
Gail, Asian diversity logo?
I try to give it to the people who'd be most offended by it because they understand it better.
Oftentimes it's more the storyboards that are more offensive, I think, because they're like, oh, he's Chinese, so they draw like buck teeth and slanted eyes on the characters. I think most people know what they're getting into when they're working here. Everyone's a target in this building.
You can't even pronounce Aoi Tower!
How do you know you're not just feeding a stereotype?
We do. I'd be hypocritical to say, well, we do, you know, and it's like, there's, especially with that guy, there's been, you know, and it's like, but we're never just doing the thing of like, okay, all the laughs just come from him being a stereotype. Yeah, he's a stereotype, but the story is about this.
Townspeople are officially naming this whole Chinatown area Little Tokyo.
What the fuck?
I think that there's actually possibly some Asians out there that'll feel a little vindicated. You know, it'll be like, yeah, there's a difference, you know.
So there's a lot of on face value, you can say there's a ton of crossover between the two clips, right? You're making fun of a voice, fun of an accent, fun of all these other things, except context, as you said, Ben, is king. And there's context that goes into it. And there's also the fact that they have reasoning behind what the purpose of the joke is, and that's why I like what Parker says. It can't just be the accent. The accent can't be the only funny thing in it. There has to be a story and there has to be a motivation behind it as well. And I like it because they talk about, a lot of times, they talk about things that they did, 15 years ago or 10 years ago. They have tried to evolve as they get older and they get a little bit more polished. And their famous one they say is the man bear pig thing, which they made fun of Al Gore for an entire episode in the mid 2000s about climate change. And they go, fuck, like we realized it was a really douchey, terrible thing to do. So they did a follow-up episode, a two-parter episode, like vindicating Al Gore and kind of the man bear pig climate change shit. But I think South Park is a very important property to talk about as we look at cancel culture, because they get away with a lot, and I think there's reasons why.
I always thought that South Park could be a really enlightening show, and it could be a really dangerous show in the wrong hands. For a long time, I boycotted that show because everyone at school was just parroting, "Screw you guys, I'm killing him," and it was just for the sound bites and the raunchiness, and that's why they loved it, and they would just parrot the terrible things that Cartman would say without getting the joke, without getting the greater message, which there normally is, and it's normally surprisingly profound, but at the same time, like it's still like it's funny. You're watching that show and you're laughing. When you listen to the audio, and
Yeah.
I'm still kind of cringing. Intentions are important and they make a difference, but it's good to at least hear him say that, yeah, we're still fueling a stereotype. It's a means to an end, but it definitely doesn't make things better.
No, and I 100%. That's why I like that he cops to it a little bit at the end, and it's difficult because yes. So I'm a South Park fan, so it is hard for me to say some of these things are bad. The same as I'm a fan of Blazing Saddles, which has some very difficult things in it to like sometimes in modern light. Although typically the people saying the bad things or the view of the people in negative ways is always a shitty person. Like it's never that the view of this person as like viewing the city walk guy just as the guy that speaks with a funny accent to the people. Those people are always the assholes. Like they're always made out to be the assholes in the episodes, and they're the ones that are the foil at the end of the day.
I want to come back to South Park in just a second because I think that it's kind of created its own sort of like cultural paradigm that it's allowed to exist sort of in this somehow beyond the and like I said, it is context. They operate sort of autonomously, sort of above the law of
they said
social reasoning.
They said they and Chappelle were grandfathered in before the rules.
But if we're talking about cancel culture or call out culture, where we're talking about, I mean, essentially, you look into that meaning that anybody who has any sort of public persona or profile, you being able to culturally cancel them based off of their things that they've shared in the past or anything along those lines. I think that we have to have the conversation of, well, let's bring it back to where is that line? Because in today's, I think, overly moderated PC sort of format, I think we're getting a lot of people called out for the wrong reasons, first and foremost. But if you look at a history of sort of political correctness, are we going to erase art from the past? Art that was, Mel Brooks couldn't make a lot of the movies that he made nowadays. I mean, like,
Sure.
where is this where do we draw a line and say
Mel Brooks can make whatever he wants? He's Mel Brooks. That's the grandfathered in point.
Well, but that's what I'm have a hard time with a lot of
But
times.
the world changes. The world changes.
But here's the thing: I don't believe that anybody is over or outside of the realm of being able to take criticism and harsh criticism. I think that cancel culture, and I think the dangerous thing about cancel culture is when you can effectively erase somebody's career, maybe not even understanding specifically what their perspective was to begin with, but based off of a set of values that you, your own self, and those that you associate with cannot adhere to. And so it's a weird place out there right now where it's like, I feel like you can be on a razor's thin edge of being, you could be a fantastic person with a ton of, credibility in the art world or whatever type of career you get into. And yet you could potentially be misconstrued or misunderstood. And like I said, nobody's beyond reproach. Everyone needs to be accountable for what it is that they put out into the world, and that's fine. But I think that the idea that you can culturally cancel somebody out of existence is a little bit alarming to me.
I don't.
It can be. Hey, Matt, do you have that Bill Hader clip? You got that Bill Hader clip?
I
didn't
don't.
You?
I don't. Which Hater clip are you talking about?
Well, Bill Hader wins the Emmy, and he's backstage, and of course, the reporters ask him about the firing of this guy. And do you want to comment on that? And he goes, no, no. And there's this awkward spattering of laughter, but he does go on to kind of just say, look, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I have no desire to hurt anybody's feelings. And you could be funny and not do that, and you could be offensive, you could be raunchy, and that really kind of it really resonated with me because I know that there have been things that I've said on the podcast that
Sure.
I think I look back and I kind of cringe. I go, that wasn't very sensitive, and it was a knee jerk reaction, and I kind of like when you record a podcast and you're trying to be funny and quick and bounce off each other. I understand how hard it is maybe just to say something that a bias you didn't even know you had, that's been reinforced, and you say something that you regret, but nothing in anything that we've recorded could get me fired from SNL because I don't disparage here's the thing, Ben.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I agree with you that it can be scary and things can be taken out of context, but it's sort of like gun control. It's a tricky thing. There are plenty of responsible people with guns. Taking away everyone's guns is kind of unfair, but if it helps people not get killed, maybe we should look into it. And maybe we should call people out and maybe we should like. The thing is,
so you're saying that we should martyr people basically by calling them out. But here's the thing: I'm not totally disagreeing with you. I feel like
I kind of do.
I think it's very dangerous, and I think that takes away free speech and what's great about America, actually.
No. It's not free speech. It's like the baker who will refuse to bake the wedding cake for the gay couple.
How is that in any way correlated?
It is their okay. You have a comedian who chooses, like Gunn said, he built his career on being a super offensive comedian at first, and he changed, right? If you're a comedian and you are taking that risk, and I understand it, even in his non-apologetic explanation, he goes, "In my path to become a serious comic, I take risks." Wait, hold on. Oh, you have it?
Yeah, I have the quote because I think this is.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
I'll finish my thought and then play it. I take risks to become a better comedian, and while I understand that point, the thing is, we are in a different time and age now, where politically it's not about Democrats and Republicans anymore. To me, it's really about, we are in a changing landscape where there are hate crimes happening because of the spotlight, the favorable spotlight that's being shown on alt-right by our own president. Ugly things have come to light, and if we're gonna martyr one white dude for not getting his dream job at SNL because he was an asshole on a podcast a week ago, message, man. Let's send a message that, like, look, you could take that risk, and maybe Comedy Central will hire you. Maybe you'll get fired from SNL. It's up to everybody. Just like the baker, it might hurt their sales in the long run if they refuse to bake cakes for gay couples, but that's their choice, and they can live with the consequences or not.
I think part of the thing to examine here, and look, we're not going to all come up with one amazing system that like solves how do we cancel and how do we not cancel and who and we don't. But I think there are some things that are, to me, very obvious signals as far as to who deserves what and how much. And yes, that makes me Judge Dredd, and yes, I will be judge, jury, and executioner here. But let me, so wait.
I am the law.
Which judge?
I am the social justice law.
I'm obviously Sylvester Stallone.
Or Urban?
I'm obviously Stallone.
Okay, just a second.
I'm not amazing enough to be Urban. Just to put a pin in Gillis, because I don't really want to give him the entire focus of this episode.
But he's a poor choice because he's an asshole.
But he's a very good textbook choice in to say this. So here are the issues I have with Shane Gillis and why I feel what happened to him is exactly what should have happened to him. One, his initial apology was fucking bullshit, and this is his apology verbatim. I'm a comedian who pushes boundaries. I sometimes miss. If you go through my 10 years of comedy, most of it bad, you're going to find a lot of bad misses. I'm happy to apologize to anyone who's actually offended by anything I've said. My intention is never to hurt anyone, but I'm trying to be the best comedian I can be, and sometimes that requires risks, right? So that, first of all, it's a goddamn tone-deaf, shitty, bad, it's not an apology. There's
a slur is not a risk. A slur is not a risk.
Literally, at some point in there, just goes like, if anyone's actually offended, I'll apologize. Like, obviously, people were offended, you dipshit. Like, that's the whole purpose. And then he follows it up after he gets fired
I'm sorry you got offended.
It feels ridiculous for comedians to be making serious public statements, but here we are. I'm a comedian who is funny enough to get SNL. That can't be taken away. Of course, I wanted an opportunity to prove myself with SNL, but I understand it would be too much of a distraction. I respect the decision they made. I'm honestly grateful for the opportunity. I've always been a Mad TV guy anyway, right? To get his little last joke in. The problem with Gillis is this. That podcast I played you is one of several other areas where he's just literally kind of flippantly tossing a slur. And by the way, I'm a big fan of Eddie Murphy Raw, and he tosses around an F-bomb slur for gay people that's really shitty. And it was used a lot in the 80s, and it's not really an excuse, but it was rampant. It was rampant in kids' movies that we watched. People used the F word.
You mean fag?
Yes. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to say it.
I don't care.
Well, you said chink earlier.
Okay, all right. Where do we draw the line? Are we going to say the N word in the podcast, guys?
I would prefer not to say anything.
I still, and obviously we're talking about somebody who has a history of being very problematic with Louis C.K.
Yeah.
But his whole thing about taking the word faggot back is hysterical to me, because he's like, for me, it never meant gay. He was like, you were just being a faggot. Like, I love that whole bit.
And I get that, but it's not it's not a word that you and I have control over.
Of course.
And that's the biggest problem is that you can't, if somebody says they want to claim and take control of that word because it's a word used against them specifically, I think they have that right. And not all of them are going to agree on it either, right? I mean, there are diverging opinions, but I'm just saying with Gillis is that his apology was bullshit, and the fact is he's just a bad schlocky comedian, and it's not the same as other people that are in that same cancel culture. I don't think.
So here is where I land on a lot of this is that I feel like the words themselves, obviously you're going to have a very strong visceral reaction to certain words or reactions or things that have a negative connotation or slurs. Now, that being said, the word in and of itself isn't the crime. It's the context in which it is being delivered and which is being weaponized. So I don't care.
Slippery slope.
Oh, yes. You think it's a slippery slope. Well, then you cannot watch Mel Brooks movies anymore because they say, certain slurs or what, or Woody Allen movie. I mean, God damn it. You can go back through pretty much all.
You sound like Woody. I mean, look at Woody Allen films. I mean, come on.
Anyways, like I said, you can retroactively go back through and we can rate sort of the all of these movies that meant a lot to us at any given stage of our lives based off of their cultural approachability, and we're probably going to have a lot of F grades for movies that we love, and for filmmakers that we love. But I understand the context. No, wait, hold on.
Yeah,
hold on. Now I think that we are probably cognizant enough of racial bias and stereotypes, and also understanding the time periods in which those movies or films or TV shows were made, that we can understand that the intent wasn't malicious. There was no malicious intent, and that's when I feel like it's more about intent. It's not about the use of a word or a phrase. It's about the intent. Are you intending to damage, or whether that's you're actually trying to do that, or whether you're inadvertently doing so? What is the end effect of your own, what you're putting out there into the world? And I think intent is everything. It doesn't matter if you use that's the thing. It's like I can't disqualify any artist for saying a word or for using a phrase or for saying something that I don't necessarily agree with, because I think that's a slippery slope. I think it's dangerous when we discredit and automatically discredit people for sharing what might actually be a unique and interesting opinion. But because they said a naughty word, all of a sudden, oh no, they're extricated. They're extricated from this artistic community. And
I don't think in this guy's shitty apology, he literally said he didn't intend to hurt anyone's feelings. So he did enough for you, Ben?
No. Well, this guy's an asshole based off of the context of everything that's been presented.
You don't believe him when he says he didn't intend to hurt somebody,
right?
So it's about if you believe, and that is, you can't prove shit. You either do it or you don't, and you get held accountable for it. And you know what? I think I know where Ben and I are going to totally align on this.
Have you ever read The Giver, Nick? Because apparently that's what you want is a monochronistic society
Hear me
where
out.
nothing
Ask
is
any of
challenging.
Nick's ex-girlfriends if he's read The Giver. They're going to tell you no.
Listen, I'm a very tender lover, Matt. And listen to me. God damn it! I don't need to defend that. I'll send you letters of recommendation in 2 weeks. All I'm saying is this:
Letters of recommendation. That's how I got into grad school.
I don't need to defend that. I've got an army of women behind me.
All right. Here's where I think, Ben, you're going to agree with me, because we're on different sides of this specific angle of the argument. But what if?
Dramatic pause.
Oh, no. He froze at the worst possible. Wait, hold on, Nick. Hold on,
I
Nick.
really thought that was a dramatic pause for
You
effect.
literally go, what if? And it just, boom, done. And you're just froze on the screen. Like,
God damn it, I gotta do this. What if? Just kidding, I'm here. What if? Instead of, quote unquote, making martyrs of people who make shitty decisions, shitty, hurtful decisions, what if, and Disney or SNL acknowledges as well, how about we hire some more fucking vetters so that we're not in this position? Why don't you take a little more time when you're putting someone in the limelight on a popular national show? Why don't, instead of putting them in the position to either have to make a shitty apology or rehash their past, how about you just do your due diligence before you hire James Gunn to do your Guardians of the Galaxy if you're afraid of his tweets? Or why don't you vet you guys, you know?
Here's the thing, and to quote a movie I really like, if you're in a room full of comedians and you're looking for someone with to raise their hand, if they're without sin, you're going to find a handful of pockets, because everybody is culpable in this. Nobody is perfect. Everybody has made decisions. So if you're looking for that perfect person or whatever who doesn't have anything in their past to own up to, first off, they're going to be boring. That is a boring person who has never made mistakes and never learned from those mistakes.
So Ben, I think this would be a good part to get into, right? If this guy's a bad example, because clearly, he, like Matt said, he wasn't telling jokes. It was like two racist dudes getting drunk and just spitballing.
It's a bad example because I could tell from 3 words in that the guy's a douchebag.
So what about the two people that were hired in SNL that are fine?
I'm saying, what is a good example of someone who was canceled, who didn't deserve it, Ben? If you're afraid that people's careers are gonna end undeservingly,
I believe that I'm sharing this podcast with 2 James Gunn fans.
It's true, although he did wind his way back up in. But Gunn is a super interesting example because, Nick, here's the funny thing. Gunn absolutely was vetted, and they knew about the tweets. They just didn't care.
Exactly.
They just basically said this was like some old avant-garde, whatever. Listen, we're all fans of the state. There's all kinds of shit that the state has done in their history, whether it was in Stella Shorts or anything. There are problematic things in that troupe that you could pick apart if you wanted to. So is someone going to say, I'm not going to hire Ken Marino for my TV show, and he's doing like 130 guest appearances on TV shows every year,
blackface,
I mean, there's a gazillion things, and I think that I think really what it comes down to, I think the intent. So I think we can agree on one thing. Intent is a very important part of it.
Intent and context.
Arguing intent and arguing context even can be difficult, right?
Sure.
And you know,
because they're still subjective.
Yeah, and Gunn is a really tricky one because Gunn was speaking as himself on his official Twitter account. So, and I think that's one thing that I want to take a little bit outside of the targets on here is to say, so while Blazing Saddles has some tricky moments in it, again, the people using the words and the people saying the things are the people being made fun of. The joke is not that they're saying the N-word. It's the people that would use the N-word so flippantly, and you're like, what is wrong? Like, it's the Archie Bunker.
Right. Well, one thing that's come up kind of interestingly recently in common pop culture talk is Robert Downey Jr. In Tropic Thunder. and which has somehow been made very relevant. It's opened up kind of a new conversation now, where because I think a couple of people basically just said, "Oh yeah, well you can get away with it if you're Robert Downey Jr. No big deal." The thing about that is it's a farce. The whole thing is a satire. The idea is he is an actor that thinks he is above.
Yes.
Basically, any sort of social constraint, and because of that, because he's such a great actor, he can play a black guy. Which
and they make fun of him throughout the entire movie. He's not being celebrated.
Exactly. And so, and like I said, that is a huge contextual thing where everyone's like, "Well, you can't make Tropic Thunder nowadays." I'm like, "Why the fuck not?"
Yeah.
It's a great movie that has a great social commentary about it. So why can you not make that movie today? Why?
Justin Trudeau.
Well, yeah, right. Actually, you know what? That's true.
It's no, and that's the problem.
But that's the thing that hurts me a little bit. Is it's like that we're going so far in the other direction. I really feel like we're embattled in the way that we want to address this in an effective way. There are people, there are social justice warriors that are out there that are approaching it in the entirely wrong way. Where, like I said, they're looking at words, they're looking at phrases, and they're looking at reactionary language. And I'm like, if you don't understand the context, yeah, that's fine. You don't want to watch a Mel Brooks movie? That's fine. But I don't want you to take that away from me when you're not the one that's understanding the context of what it is that they're actually trying to say.
Well, and I think it's also about recognizing it as so they're also so that there's a really good example in this one, and it was Kevin Hart, and he had this there was a whole bit with him and Billy Eichner, right? So someone went back through Kevin Hart's tweets, and surprise, surprise, over 20 years of being a stand-up comedian, he made some not so great, fairly homophobic tweets.
A lot.
A lot. And so everyone like freaks out. Of course, there are some people that are too big to get canceled in certain ways and he seemed to have gone through it. But Billy Eichner,
but he's very little.
This is true. No, Eichner had part of it that I think is important too, which is what happens after something. So something comes up and they dig through your past and they say, "Hey, we listened to your podcast, Matt, and you said this, and that." And I go, "Okay, you know what? I can tell you, I'll address each of those things, right? Like, here's what I was thinking in this moment. I did this. It was a bad joke. It was not good.
Right.
I don't like that I said it, and I regret that I said it, and I'm sorry that I said it. Right? There's a way to take to atone and say, look, and that was what Eichner did. Eichner goes, I don't want to fucking end this guy's career. What does that do for anyone? Just to be like, hey, right, Kevin Hart, you hate gay people and you suck. And he's like, or maybe Kevin Hart's changed. Maybe we have a conversation and he understands why the shit he said is so hurtful to me and to people like me. And I think there is a learning aspect that comes with these things. And I think I hate to draw it back to this fucking asshole, but Gillis absolutely could have weathered this storm so much better than I think he could have been on SNL.
He compounded it.
If he came out and he just goes, look, you know what? I've been a struggling comedian here in Boston. I'm trying everything I fucking can to do it. And I said some stupid fucking shit. I don't think and the reason he didn't say that is because he would never even fucking think that. When you listen to the stuff, he would never do that. But I think that's the difference, is that you have people like him. They're just like, fuck you. I say what I want, and that's that. Or you have someone like, so Sarah Silverman's a great example, Sarah Silverman used to say some of the fucking foulest shit, to the point at which where I almost couldn't listen to a lot of her stuff. Like, it was uncomfortably just mean and angry and just like bad.
No,
like
I'm with you.
And I counted myself a fan of hers, and there were times it was just like, it's too far. It is too much, and I don't like it. And then as she evolved as a human being, she's like, fuck. Like, a lot of these comedians realize the same thing when they get out of their 20s and, you know, and the stuff like that. And that's not to say that they should get a free pass, but I think acknowledging like, hey, I did some really fucking stupid things, like, and I have no answer to it other than I was trying, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter. I fucked up, and maybe I need to learn a little bit more, or maybe I need to talk to some more people outside of my small sphere of comfort, you know, whatever that is. But I think that's super important, and it doesn't give anyone a free pass, but it needs to happen more.
So I think ultimately what I want to bring the conversation back to, though, is so here's the thing that I think that we all agree on. 100% agree on.
Shane Gillis is a twat.
Well,
Okay,
we can agree on that. We don't like abhorrent messaging or with any sort of racial bias or anything that is could be construed as racially insensitive or sexist, anything like that. We don't like it, right? We don't like
Hateful
anything
stuff.
that's hateful. Anything that's hateful.
Not just like sexist or mean or saying a bad word or slur. That you play that clip and it's like you feel
with an intention to
contempt.
Yeah.
Like contempt dripping from their monologue, and
they're so happy with it.
and the thing is, to go back to Trudeau, it's like, the worst picture of me ever taken was on Cinco de Mayo with the sombrero and a dumb mustache, and I like super ashamed of that photo. And if someone wanted to not give me work because of that,
you were super proud of it the day of, though.
It wasn't his fault. It was my fault. It was my fault.
You want to be funny, right? Now and then you say, okay, well, how is that different than Trudeau actually going in brown face? I like to think that maybe it's a little different, but at the same time,
it's not.
It's really not. It's really not. And I think that it's possible that anybody, like you said, could get caught in something really insensitive, but at the same time, all I feel like is if that ever came back to haunt me, you own it and you grow, and hopefully you've grown as a person. And if you haven't, that's part of another reason why I'm so excited to go to Japan, is embrace new cultures, not go back to a place where it's a joke, even with well intentions. I just want to get away from that.
But the thing I wanted to bring it back to, because the thing is obviously I know that you're well intentioned, Nick. Like you don't have like a spiteful or hateful bone in your body. At least I don't think you do. And Matt just shrugged.
I got a bone in my body, but it's not spiteful.
Oh God!
Back to the bone. Anyways, I think, like I said, it comes back to intent, and it comes back to. But here's the dangerous thing for me, because like I said, I think we can all agree that we don't like that type of messaging. We don't like hateful things. But my problem is who is the one who's making the decision on who to cancel and who not to? Because that person is fallible. And when we're talking about an aggregate group of people, when we're talking about a collective of people, those people are fallible. So there are people that are making it their mission to comb through old tweets and online social profiles and stuff like this to call people out on activity. And I believe is that in a lot of cases, those individuals, the ones that are being called out, may not, based on intent, based on context, based on everything, may have a better understanding of what their own perspectives, and may be better in some cases than the people who were actually doing the calling out. And that's what I think was funny about the whole situation that happened up there in Ohio, when a guy from one of the publications basically went through,
beer guy, the beer thing.
Yeah. Well, went through somebody's old tweets, found something, published it basically, and then somebody went through, some alt-right asshole, of course, combed through their public profile and their tweets, and then found this shit that the reporter was said and was calling people fags back in like 2006 and 2007.
Yeah,
and then published that. But that's the thing. It's like, I'm like, you know what? I'm really happy that happened. I'm happy that somebody actually took the time to go back through that person who was calling them out's profile, because that's what I'm saying. Nobody is beyond reproach at this point.
I think also that
I think it's fine if that happens. At the end of the day, you're in the court of public opinion, and that is who decides whether you're forgiven for an old photo or something shitty you said on a podcast. At the end of the day, if what's so wrong about kind of going through that gauntlet, as long as you take your lumps and present who you really are. And I think that he did in that shitty non-apology, whereas Gunn did the opposite, and he got forgiven. I don't think that it automatically means if someone combs through your tweets and finds something bad, anybody can find something bad. It's how you've moved forward. Have you grown as a person? And if you pass the court of public opinion, then you know what? maybe that is a process.
But public opinion is fallible. It's absolutely fallible. More people want OJ to go free than to be locked up. I mean, like, what is public opinion? Public opinion is subjective and it changes.
Well, I don't know if you read the same article or not, Ben. Because there was an article. It was because it brought up the beer guy thing as well. But it was article had a great quote in it, which was talking about Fahrenheit 451, which is a Bradbury book, basically about them banning certain books and burning them. And the quote by Bradbury was, "I think people misconstrue that my fear in the future is that the government is going to tell us what not to read, because it's not my fear. My fear is that the public will overtake it and be the ones to say what we can't read, and what they decide is the end, be all end all, right?" So I do see the fear in it. I think one of the things I think there's almost an arbiter in this in a weird way, in that right now, it used to be, I was very much on the, people are looking up from like the right or the left, depending on like whoever the celebrity is and all that stuff. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there are literally just people that want to watch the world burn, that they wait for somebody to get announced for something or whoever it is, and they just have a list of people and they because the amount of time, first of all, let's say I get SNL tomorrow. They're going to have to listen, God help them. They're going to have to listen to like 145 hours of the New Way podcast to like even including the first 31 unlistenable episodes. Oh, Nick has gone offline. It's like his little pulse is just barely holding on there.
Billy, hold on.
Come on. You can make it.
You can do it. Champ. Wake up, champ. Wake up. Champ, wake up.
Oh, no. Yeah, Nick, we've lost Nick temporarily here, it appears. Nick? Nope.
No.
We'll try to get Nick back on. But yeah, I think it's really just. Oh, hey Nick.
Hey,
there you go. That was an amazing. We thought we lost you there, buddy. We had heard a little flat line, like boop boop, 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 and then gone, and nothing.
Well, I came back to say goodbye, gentlemen, because I really do need to pack. So.
Are you going somewhere?
You know. I am. I'm going to Japan. I'm going to get some Suntory whiskey for you.
Just to remember to pack and some extra clothes for your wife for the trip home.
I got an extra bag, big bag to
Oh,
bring
you
extra
put bag
stuff
inside the
back.
bag. That's a. Are you sure you've never done this before? That's a good move.
Well, now I know. Take notes, everybody.
He learned it from
I'm excited.
condoms.
My hope for culture is that we get to a point where we're just all a little more respectful, and that intent is a little easier to distinguish, because right now intent is tricky to distinguish. So why don't we just not hurt each other's feelings for a little while?
I like it, Nick.
Sure.
I don't know.
Take that message to Japan with you when you do your Mario Kart. I cannot wait to see video of your Mario Kart. You have no idea.
Be some good video. So follow Niximus on Instagram, but it's private. So I'm
sorry. Did you pass that plug with me ahead of time? All plugs on the New Way must be passed by. God damn it, Nick.
I'm sorry.
He said Fliximus.
That didn't
Fliximus.
That didn't clear the marketing department here.
I'm sorry, Matt. I just was looking forward to gaining followers.
You just cut out there for a second.
You froze up for me, like.
I said I was looking forward to gaining 6 new followers.
Oh, that's very, very funny. By the way, the thoughts of Niximus do not mirror the thoughts of parent company Last Pint Productions or the New Way podcast. Just so you know, there's some hot takes on there we're not ready for.
You should have put that in the adult content open.
Yeah. All right, Nikki. Godspeed. Safe travels, my friend. Ben and I will take this one home.
I love you. The thing is Nick and I don't disagree. I mean, like we come from the same place of people being decent, and that's what we want people to be is decent to one another and in their professional work and in mediums where you have to kind of push the button a little bit. I feel like where you have to you're going to have to be on that razor's edge in order to effectively communicate your art. I think that we're at a precarious time where there is no set because there never will be a set of standards and practices that really apply across the board to this art. And like I said, it's all about context. It's all about. I feel like it should be less about what you say and more about how you say it.
I think the awareness is good. That's the one part that I think is so
but there are people that are pissing me off right now that are calling people out for bullshit that doesn't need to necessarily be called out.
But I think there's all right. So for example, it's going to come across very poorly for me, I'm sure. So I'll take my lumps with this one, but. As we're discussing Nick's final preparations for Japan and talking about luggage packing stuff, about 4 easy, stupid, stereotypical Japanese jokes flash through my head.
Nice.
Right? That's just
you're a simple man.
I'm a simple man. That's the way my brain works. I think in those things, but I also have the switch in my brain to go: is this so funny that it earns the ability to exist, right? And I think that's an important thing is to say, is it worth it, right? Is there something about this that might be off, a little bit off, or it might be stereotypical, it might be poking fun or whatever it is. And part of the reason my brain works that way, and my friends listening from high school know this, we grew up with a lot of like different groups, kind of, with most of my best friends were Jewish. Rick's from Paraguay, Helgi's from Brazil. Like there were a lot of cultural things where we would just make jokes very quickly about one another that had no basis in anything that was like real. It was just, what's the easiest, quickest, dumb joke you can get to that's like kind of like busting someone's balls for whatever reason it is. And they're not worth it. Like, it's at the end of the day, like those are things I absolutely 5 years ago would just like, I'd throw 10 of those out thinking maybe one of them will land. That's my risk. My risk is just that only one lands. And it's not that case anymore. And I think that's something that is important to watch, especially when you're talking about SNL and some of these stuff, because these guys talk, I mean, the Stefan sketches don't necessarily age well for little people or any of the other things that go into that sketch that are just like one-off jokes at the end of stuff. But I think it is important that people think just a little bit, do I have gold here or not? And not gold, but do I have a reason for doing this that makes it worthwhile?
Sure. And I mean, like I said, you're taking away some of the spontaneity of some of the fun parts. Like when we're talking about comedy, there are, like I said, it's all about intention. Like if you're
but I'm not talking improv or interviews. Like I'm not taking away from their stand-up, or they're not riffing a ton on stand-up. They know where their jokes are and what's going on. That's yes. So maybe I lose some improvised things. I'm kind of okay with that.
I understand. My whole point is that we still live in a free country, and people will deservedly get shit on when they say shitty things about people. And right now we're at this pinnacle of that, where it's like, but I think that we've gone a little bit too far above the line, where I feel like a lot of the people they need to turn the mirror around on themselves a little bit. I feel like a lot of the people who are spending their time trying to destroy other people's careers need to understand that karma's not going to look good in the mirror.
Yeah, that was someone. The joke for SNL was like they fired Shane Gillis. I hope no one shows them Eddie Murphy's Raw. Right. He's hosting in 3 weeks, right, or whatever. I get that.
It would be awesome if he actually brings it up.
No, and I think that's all. I like to hear these conversations, and of course, all of the comedians are like, no, like. And that did bother me a little bit with Gillis, and I don't think any of them was doing, and it's not their fault. I don't think they're doing the due diligence to actually listen to the shit.
I didn't know anything about Gillis, and I hadn't heard anything about him. All I heard was that, and all I had to listen to was 10 seconds of that clip or that podcast that you sent, and I was just like, I'm glad this guy got fired.
Yeah.
No, that's just me. I don't.
And I was worried that a lot of people were standing up for him that I don't think listened to the shit, which is it.
Sure.
I think I think that's another important part.
It's so easy to tell early on whether this person is coming from a place where it's non-damaging and not malicious. And obviously there was a complete disconnect. There is that guy doesn't understand what I think he doesn't really understand kind of a social norm is. Yeah, is what it feels like to me. And is using comedy as a guise to be kind of spiteful and just ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's exactly kind of when I was where I was trying to get to a little bit with like saying I could make some very easy joke. Like that shit, that back and forth there is fucking dumb easy. And it's, yes, and your brain has to go to some weird fucking places to do it, but making just stereotypical jokes is not difficult. And anyone that like you're either doing it just to get a rise, which is shitty, or you're doing it because it's easy, which is also shitty. Like I think there's that's why I wanted to play it with the South Park, because the South Park is cringy in and of itself, but then there's there's more going on with it. It's not just like a 10-second bit that's being done or a 2-minute bit. They're building an entire story to say, here's what we're creating with this. Also look alongside it to see infinitely other things being made fun of in a similar light. But the one thing I was telling you earlier, I wanted to talk about very, very quickly that fits into this. I don't know why this exactly popped in my head, but do you know who Dame Edna is? Are you familiar with the character Dame Edna?
I don't believe so.
So this might be just more in a little of my age. It's really not even my age group. It's probably a little bit older than that. But Dame Edna was this Australian guy named Barry Humphries. Did this character called Dame Edna that had these like big glass. It was a woman, this big glasses and stuff, and she called everyone puppets and like she did British. Like, it's this British character named Dame Edna. It was like a staple of late night TV in the 80s and 90s, right? And like the Tony Awards and all this shit. So Dame Edna is just, it's this guy. It's this older, ugly Australian dude that just has done this character for 30 years. And then all of a sudden, like last year, he gets in an interview, and no one's interviewing the guy behind Dame Edna, and you're not digging too deep on this person.
Right.
And it turns out he's like major transphobic Trump supporter, and goes in this like long interview, and they're like, oh, okay. Like it was supposed to be just this kind of puff piece, but they were asking like, oh, well, what do you think about like the trans movement since you've been you've been in drag in this character? And it just went on this like really angry, mean kind of thing. And I'm like, no one's gonna, I mean, Dame Edna's career is not really a career at this point, probably anyway, but I was like, there's gotta be the most like has-been person that they're just like, well, you're done. And also just kind of strange to think about a lot of these. How many people do we watch and enjoy and laugh at or celebrate or whatever? We just don't really know what's going on behind it.
It's totally true. Like, imagine like all of a sudden, like tomorrow we're going to find out that Keanu Reeves is a bad person.
If you tell me anything bad about Tom Hanks, if Tom Hanks, here's another good one. So I had my buddy Ken and I a long time ago had a premise for a sketch, and the premise was very simple because we were sitting around his house one day and his dog was there. It's kind of how there's a transition here, and the dog is like sitting there, and he's like, oh, I love Scarlett. She's like this great dog, and then like we're both like, what if Scarlett, like, what if you could like find out what's going on in her head? And we came up with this idea that, like, what if your dog spoke to you once, just once, early on?
I want you to kill.
No, yeah, exactly. But they said something so upsetting, and then they just went back to being a dog, and forever you had to live with it. And we were talking about it, and Ken's Jewish. She's like, oh yeah, it would be like, I hate the Jews. And then we just go back to like nothing. I was like, that would destroy me.
It's in my head right now. I just imagine Sully like turning to me, like we're on the couch, and he turns to me and just goes, I like to look at pictures of naked boys.
It's just something you can't wrap. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. If something bad came out about Tom Hanks, I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I can't quit him. It's impossible. But it is an interesting thing to think about. So, what about you guys out there? I want to hear back from some folks, and maybe you guys will call in on a couple of episodes coming up. But who are you? Is there anyone out there that you guys listen to or watch that you are embarrassed by some of their behavior, or maybe you've turned the corner and you used to like them, you don't? We want to hear from you. So write in, call in, send smoke signals, whatever it is.
Yeah, do something.
We will be on a sporadic schedule for the next
every 2 weeks for the next month.
Yeah, we've got Nick in Japan, me in China, Ben and Beth. We're all in
limbo.
We're all in. No, I said Ben in Beth.
Oh. Rarely.
Like limbo. To get down that low? All right. I'm getting canceled. Beth is going to cancel me.
Cancel culture. We don't like Matt anymore.
Anyway.
Bye, Matt.
Thanks so much for listening to the New Wave Podcast. We'll have another episode up to you in a couple of weeks, and we'll talk to you then. Cheers.
Cheers.